G'day, I wanted to talk to you today about a book that I've made in the last couple of days. It's called Orpheun Tragedy. It concerns a trip to Orpheus Island for a photography workshop in October last year. And I went along thinking, this is going to be great. We're going to get access to a really good guy. Les Laughlin was one of the tutors, and the other tutors, of course, were Doug Spout and Vicky Cooper. And this book's actually been made to gift to them because they were so wonderful on that trip. The thing about it was that we're at James Cook University's site, their research facility on Orpheus Island, and I was stunned with the amount of rubbish that was left lying around. Under the accommodation blocks where we were staying, there were all manner of odd man-made objects. There were scrunchies that girls put in their hair. There was actually a card advertising the workshop that Doug and Vicky are doing in Greece later this year. And that had been given out the day before. That was on the ground outside the accommodation. There was obviously hair and socks, interestingly enough, screws, nuts and bolts, cable ties, hence we've got this one tied up with cable ties. There was a bottle top which has been applied onto the surface of the very front of this image, and so this is a unique book because that is a unique object, blah 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 blah. And we're all talking about uniqueness and all that sort of stuff these days. And so I thought to myself, my response to the course was not good. I was actually ill at the time. I had this terrible cold or some sort of nasal infection, I don't know what was wrong, and because of that, combined with the fact that the tutors weren't giving fair cop to people who were wanting to print stuff and the printers were being hogged by everybody else, I didn't actually get much of a chance to do any printing, and that was part of the workshop. It was a critical part of the workshop. Doug and Vicky, on the other hand, were talking about books and little photographic projects that they were giving us to go out and do. And so I didn't actually complete a book while I was at Orpheus either, but I've still got the templates, and never fear, one will happen eventually. But in my head came this combination of the fact that I figured that the island was broken, a paradise that had been ruined by man, even at a research station, at a university research station, with all this mess left. So I picked up all these objects and I put them in a brown paper bag, and I wrote a poem on the front cover, signed it, dated it and all that kind of stuff, and then I drew on the back, I drew a map of where I'd picked this rubbish up from, giving them a bit of an idea that in such a small space I'd found so much stuff, and that perhaps the rest of the island was a bit of a disaster, and it certainly wasn't a tropical paradise. And so anyway, I've come home and I had this idea in mind to do this book, and to make it unique I've actually torn the pages, and so the pages are torn as we progress through them, just to suggest that the island is broken. This is a thong, like a footwear thong, not an underwear type thong. It's just some drawing with a torch at night. Oops, I've missed one here. Little baby that was strung up in the bushes, really quite odd. And so they get out of order, and you can actually pair them up too, like this. Remember there was a book when we were kids that you used to do this sort of stuff with, and you could put things together and you'd make different animals out of the combinations of the two. And so the idea is that we actually have all of the images presented, but they're all torn in half. Now, this is not unique. I mean, the tears are all unique within themselves, but in terms of uniqueness and provenance, it's not a bad sort of a start. And so they're all titled the usual thing. This one's a shame. It's kind of torn, well, it's torn through, almost through the heart, and there's a little heart-shaped bullet hole in this little motif here. The other thing that I did do when I was on Orpheus, which I tend to do these days, is I'll find a motif and I'll go and I'll photograph a motif, a recurring motif. And in this case, the first motif I found was a circle, this little pile of some sort of insect or some sort of bug in the ocean, actually digging a hole in the ocean and throwing up all the sand in a round circle. And so from there on, the circle, whether it was a complete circle, a nice circle, a busted circle, whatever, became the recurring motif. And so we have the little heart-shaped motif there. This one. It's voice of Rod Dillon. All out of whack now. So it's kind of fun. You can actually, this is amazing. The graveyard at on Orpheus. And so they progress through, and the shadows simply form a circle, and so the motif goes on and on. Broken piece of cable with I don't know, some sort of generator or something like that at the end of it. Motif as husks, so the husks are actually disappearing. It's becoming an empty motif. It's not a full motif anymore. And this is motif disappearing from view because it's quite simply a recess in the sand that was roughly circular. Then, of course, there's three pages of poetry, a poem that I wrote about the island and my experiences on the island. And so that's it. It's called Orpheun Tragedy. And Doug and Vicky are due here. They should have been here a couple of hours ago, but anyway, they're due here from Gundagai today. And so I'll be able to give this to them tonight to say thank you for their support for me when I was on Orpheus in the entire tragedy that was Orpheus Island 2016.